LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the June 6th edition of LiberalViewer Monday Media Mixup. Thanks for joining me. Today I'll be using the 10 best clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, except there was no NBC News Meet the Press because of the French Open. It was Sunday, it wasn't Meet the Press. But there's still the so-called corporate media here in the United States, and I'll still be giving you a fair use media criticism and political commentary show today. You can see my main topic is, can Biden Congress pass new gun safety laws? That's the title of the video. But I'm also going to have two bonus clips at the end previewing this January 6th committee hearings that are going to be held live in prime time this month. There's one coming up this Thursday, and I'm going to, at the end, I'll discuss with you whether you all think I should do a special Friday live stream covering clips from the supposedly blockbuster hearings that they're going to hold on Thursday. And before I get to any of that, though, I want to start with my political comedy clip. It's kind of on the January 6th committee topic, because this was an interview that Representative Louie Gohmert, honestly, one of the dumbest guys in Congress, and that is quite a title given the people in Congress. He was answering a question about the arrest of Peter Navarro, former Trump administration economic advisor. He was arrested this last week for contempt of Congress for not honoring a couple subpoenas that they sent him for his presence and for his documents. And instead of letting him surrender himself, they actually went and got him before he got on an airplane, and they cuffed him and brought him to jail. And that got Louie Gohmert all upset about our two-tiered justice system. And he said something especially stupid, which I will talk about after we watch. Oh, and this is taken a little out of context. It's on Newsmax. I put a link to the entire Newsmax video down in the video description, but I will discuss these 28 seconds after we watch it together over here.
It actually puts an exclamation point on the fact that we have a two-tiered justice system. If you're a Republican, you can't even lie to Congress or lie to an FBI agent, or they're coming after you. They're going to bury you. They're going to put you in the D.C. jail and terrorize and torture you and not live up to the Constitution there.
If you're a Republican, you can't even lie to the FBI, and you can't even lie to Congress, even though both those things are felonies. And, I said it was taken out of Congress because if you watch it go all the way around, he talks about this Hillary Clinton campaign lawyer, Michael Sussman, who was acquitted this last week of lying to the FBI, and that's one of the things he's all upset about, is because how come Republicans can't get away with it? Well, of course, there wasn't enough evidence to convict Michael Sussman beyond a reasonable doubt. I was actually a little disappointed that did not get covered at all on any of the four news programs, since there was no Meet the Press. It was all about, remember Trump ranting about the oranges of the investigation, which was really the origins of, the Russia collusion investigation, which on the right wing they call it a hoax. And that was the weird thing about this trial. It was about this one tiny little thing about the Alpha Bank server, whether it was Trump communicating with Russia through the Alpha Bank server, which is not what started the Russia collusion investigation. That was started when this Trump foreign policy advisor, this young guy, George Papadopoulos, was overheard by the Australian ambassador in London bragging about how Trump was getting dirt on Hillary from the Russians. That's actually what started the Russia collusion investigation, not the Michael Sussman and his Alpha Bank thing. And they couldn't even prove that he lied to the FBI. They're certainly not beyond a reasonable doubt, or that it was material. And so he was acquitted by a jury. And actually, I spent a lot of time arguing with this right-wing guy. Well, not him. I posted one response to Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA, this young college Republican, or They just held their group. Anyway, he follows me on Twitter, so I followed him back, and every now and then I'll respond to something stupid he says, and he never responds to me, but his followers, like I get in arguments with like 12, 15 people. So if you go to, I put a link down in the video description to my Twitter. It's twitter.com/LiberalViewer. If you go to my tweets and replies, you'll see a whole bunch of arguments on the Michael Sussman case. So I wanted to talk about that briefly before I get to the main topic and then the bonus topic. The main topic, again, is whether Biden and Congress are going to be able to pass gun safety. I would call them gun safety laws. Some people call it gun reform, gun law reform. I don't know what you want to call it, but that was the main topic covered at the beginning of each of the 4 news programs. The longest, best coverage, since we don't have Chuck Todd in his package this week, is from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. George Stephanopoulos was hosting his own show for once this week. Well, not for once, but it seems like he only hosts every 3rd or 4th time, and even though his name is on the show, and he started the show with a few words and then kind of like, well, you've seen this format before where he turns it over to Rachel Scott, who is their ABC reporter, talking about this issue in depth, which I think I talked for too long now, so I will talk about all of that with you a little more after we watch the ABC News This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary from yesterday together over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. The facts are both terrifying and mind-numbing. 3 weeks ago, a gunman opened fire on black shoppers at a Buffalo supermarket. Since then, there have been more than 35 mass shootings in America. The latest overnight in Philadelphia, where several active shooters unleashed a barrage on a crowd in South Street, killing at least 3, injuring almost a dozen others. There's been a mass shooting every single week this year. More than 8,000 killed by guns in 5 months. ABC News is going to cover this issue from every single day, analyzing from all angles the rise in mass shootings, firearm murders, and suicide by young people, the role of social media in mental illness, and what can be done to address this deadly epidemic. Congressional correspondent Rachel Scott starts us off this morning on Capitol Hill. Good morning, Rachel.
George, good morning. After another string of mass shootings in the U.S., President Biden called on Congress to meet the moment, asking if this time would finally be enough to change the political landscape here in Washington and break through decades of gridlock.
Hours after yet another mass shooting, this time in Tulsa, President Biden made an urgent plea for sweeping gun reform, asking the nation, how much more carnage are we willing to accept?
We need to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. And if we can't ban assault weapons, then we should raise the age to purchase them from 18 to 21.
The president delivered a rare primetime address as the U.S. surpasses more than 230 mass shootings this year.
I want to be very clear. This is not about taking away anyone's guns. It's about protecting whole communities. It's about protecting our freedoms to go to school, to a grocery store, to a church, without being shot and killed.
But despite his impassioned pleas for change, the political reality is most of President Biden's demands are a long shot on Capitol Hill. Sources say what's on the table in the Senate's bipartisan talks is much narrower than what the president is hoping for, including expanded background checks, incentives for states to implement red flag laws, which would allow guns to be temporarily taken away from people considered to be dangerous, and funding for mental health and strengthening school security. Polls show the majority of Americans do support most of these measures. But on Capitol Hill, the partisan divide is sharp and bitter. The debate at a House hearing on gun reform getting heated.
You know who didn't have their constitutional right to life respected? The kids at Parkland and Sandy Hook and Uvalde and Buffalo. So spare me the bullshit about constitutional rights.
Republicans pushing back.
We must be here for the gunman is an outrage. How dare you? You think we don't have hearts?
The House Judiciary Committee advanced the bill that includes nearly everything the president asked for. It doesn't stand a chance in the Senate, where Democrats need the support of at least 10 Republicans to get it passed. And while calls for change are growing louder,
Don't shoot! I want to grow up!
so is the backlash for Republicans who break from their party. GOP Congressman Chris Jacobs represents Buffalo. Days after the mass shooting there, he called for a ban on assault weapons. The blowback was swift. Faced with intense scrutiny from fellow Republicans, Jacobs announced he will no longer run for re-election.
If you're not going to take a stand on something like this, I don't know what you're going to take a stand on.
Across the country, some states are not waiting for Congress to act. In New York, lawmakers passed legislation this week to revise its red flag laws and raise the age to buy a semi-automatic weapon from 18 to 21. As the nation continues to mourn the lives lost too soon. The funerals of two of the 21 Uvalde victims taking place today. 10-year-old Alithia Ramirez and Ellie Garcia, who would have turned 10 yesterday. The president asking if this time will be any different.
For God's sake, do something. After Columbine, after Sandy Hook, after Charleston, after Orlando, after Las Vegas, after Parkland, nothing has been done. This time that can't be true.
This is shaping up to be a critical week here on Capitol Hill. Families of the victims of the Buffalo and Uvalde mass shootings will be testifying before Congress, and so will a fourth grader who said that she covered herself in her classmates' blood and played dead when the suspect entered her classroom in Uvalde. As for those bipartisan talks, senators are under pressure to reach a deal this week. George, I'm told that is a goal, not a guarantee.
Okay, Rachel, thanks very much. Let's talk about this on our roundtable. Joined by Chris Christie, Donna Brazil.
So yeah, that was the intro news summary on ABC. Like I said, I thought it was the best. I like the list of things that were possibly going to be in this deal. And I'm going to have Chris Murphy, one of the Democratic senator from Connecticut, who's one of the chief negotiators, clip of him talking about what's going to be in the deal and the possibility of success. And I'll also have Pat Toomey, Republican from Pennsylvania, who's part of it, a clip from him talking about it. Also this weird clip from Steve Scalise, but that I'm going to show Fox News bias when I get to it, especially their use of this graph, which was good, but then lack of follow-up. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. I wanted to, was there the other part about the Rachel Scott thing? She mentioned something that I don't think are in any of the other news summaries, that at these congressional hearings that are coming up, and they actually had some good clips of the congressional hearings on new gun laws in the House last week, including the bonus Louie Gohmert clip, being outraged that he's supposedly for the gunmen or whatever. And the one thing that they mentioned about the upcoming hearings, though, was that this fourth grade girl who covered herself in her dead friend's blood to pretend to be dead to escape getting killed by the gunman in Uvalde, Texas, that person, that fourth grade girl, is testifying to Congress this week. And, I got a lot of response both from the live viewers and the recorded show viewers last week as to whether Dana Bash should have interviewed that one kid who was, I don't know, 4th, 5th grade, even though his mother was there. And most people seem to think, no, it was not a good idea to interview that kid on national television. And I probably think the same is probably true of this, even though it's Democrats in Congress. And I have to say that I am willing to criticize them for putting a 4th grade girl up there to testify about this traumatic experience. Probably not the best idea, but you can let me know what you think in the comment section. Now, this next news summary is Fox News Sunday. John Roberts is in as the host, and Lucas Tomlinson is their reporter, and they do kind of the same news summary. I think it focuses more on there's one part where they focus the Republicans are really negotiating in good faith, which I don't know. That doesn't seem to be like a fact or even actual news. But they also, I think, they try to make the Republicans look better here than that last. You're not going to see the bonus Louie Gohmert clip, or it's more about the Second Amendment. And then also there's a big pivot here to, like, he's trying to get these gun reform laws, but meanwhile the economy's blowing up, and gas prices, and the whole Saudi Arabia trip, and how he one time in the campaign he said Saudi Arabia is a pariah. Oh, I'm really going to pre-criticize the clip. I believe in here they also mentioned about the accusation that the Saudi prince, or the State Department CIA accusation that the Saudi prince Mohammed bin Sultan, or MBS as they call him, I guess, because what I said is hard to pronounce. Did I pronounce it right? Anyway, that he killed Khashoggi, the American journalist. Was it Adnan Khashoggi? No, I always get his first name wrong. But anyway, that'll be in here. You can put his actual name in the comments if you want to, and we'll watch Fox News' much more biased against the Biden administration news summary together that I pretty much pre-criticized, but I'll probably find something else to criticize after we watch together over here.
And from Fox News in Washington, President Biden makes an urgent plea to Congress to pass new gun restrictions, saying now is the time for Republicans to join with Democrats on meaningful legislation. At the same time, the president touting better than expected jobs numbers as Americans continue to face surging gas prices and high inflation. In a moment, we'll speak with Gene Sperling, senior advisor to the president, about the administration's plans to bring some relief. But first, let's turn to Lucas Tomlinson. He is live at the White House for us this morning, where, Lucas, we have seen a bit of a reset over the past week.
John, today the price of gas is double what it was when President Biden took office. In a rare primetime address, it was guns that had the president's attention following a spate of mass shootings.
Enough, enough, enough.
President Biden urging Congress to pass new gun legislation. 10 GOP senators will be needed to break the deadlock. Many see little chance of that happening. Some Democrats remain optimistic.
We had about 6 to 8 Republicans engaged. I absolutely think that our partners are negotiating in good faith.
The president wants to make gun reform a central issue in the upcoming midterm elections.
I believe the majority of you will act to turn your outrage into making this issue central to your vote.
The president meeting with the Federal Reserve Chairman in the Oval Office, along with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, part of a ramped-up messaging campaign from the White House. Biden says tackling inflation is his top economic priority, but he will have to do so amid staff shuffling after reports a number of them recently jumped ship. Yellen with a candid admission saying she was wrong about the risks of inflation, a rare mea culpa in Washington. Some good news for the White House Friday. The Labor Department says 390,000 new jobs were added in May. The economy remains 822,000 short of pre-pandemic levels. The record-setting price of gas, the driving force behind the president visiting Saudi Arabia after asking the kingdom to pump more oil. Critics want to see that happen here in the U.S., not the Middle East. As a presidential candidate, Biden once called Saudi Arabia a, quote, pariah. The State Department and CIA accused Saudi's crown prince of ordering the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
The president will not be going to Saudi Arabia this month, as originally reported. He is expected to go in July. John?
Lucas Tomlinson reporting from the White House with the very latest from 1600 Pennsylvania. Lucas, thank you so much. Joining us now is a senior advisor to the president, Gene Sperling.
And I won't have a clip of Gene Sperling, and it was Jamal Khashoggi. I don't know why I thought it was Adnan. Adnan Khashoggi was somebody else in, like, Iran-Contra, I think. Like, it's way back in my brain from the 80s, maybe. But no, it's Jamal Khashoggi was the U.S.-based journalist who was murdered by the Saudis. And a couple, I said I'd have more criticisms to make after we watch Lucas Tomlinson's report about the bias there. And I'll show more of John Roberts' bias when I get to his interview with Steve Scalise. But you notice at the beginning of Lucas Tomlinson's report, he says, that gas prices are really high, but Biden decided to speak about guns. There's sort of like a subtext of judgment there right at the beginning. I noticed during the report, and I thought that speech that Biden gave about enough is enough with the guns, after all these, and he's had a long history, and he was one of the people who got the original assault weapons ban, and I actually thought this is one of Biden's best speeches. You did see some clips of it from Fox News there, and you saw some in the ABC report. I used in my thumbnail for this video, I used a frame from Biden's speech. But I noticed that in the Fox News report, they used this gratuitous clip of Biden walking slowly up to the podium to try to emphasize that he's an old man, I guess. which that didn't seem quite fair. And they also emphasized Janet Yellen's admission that she got something wrong about inflation, and they like beat in the gas prices and the inflation. They did mention good news on the job front, but short of pre-pandemic levels, even though people were saying it was going to be like years before unemployment came down, and it was only because of the all the spending that's caused some of the inflation, and spending hasn't even caused that much inflation, as I talked about on previous week's shows. But anyway, that was kind of gratuitous as well. And then the whole like relation of the gas crisis to Biden condemning the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, that was at the end. And at least I have to apologize for getting his name wrong. But anyway, I pre-criticized the clip and post-criticized the clip. So there you go. And I'm not even done with the Fox News bias. I have like multiple screen captures to criticize the John Roberts interview of Steve Scalise coming up. But let's get through the news summaries. They go from longest to shortest, so they're only getting shorter, and there are only two more because no Meet the Press. So this is the CNN State of the Union news summary, just like 82 seconds from Jake Tapper at the beginning of the program yesterday over here.
Tapper in Washington, where the State of our Union is angry at the lack of leadership. Senate negotiators say this will be the critical week to see if they can reach a deal to do anything to respond to the mass shootings in Uvalde, Texas, and Buffalo, New York, that took the lives of 31 Americans. The talks are intensifying as President Biden delivered a rare primetime address Thursday saying enough is enough and outlining a series of measures to try to stem the violence, including a ban on some kinds of semi-automatic weapons. But even with good intentions from some on both sides, the passage of anything, the chances still seem remote. And as lawmakers deliberate, Americans continue to be killed daily in this uniquely American epidemic. Overnight, at least 3 people were killed and 11 wounded after a mass shooting on South Street in Philadelphia, one of the city's most popular areas for restaurants and bars. And on a personal basis, that's an area less than a mile from where I grew up. That's the street where I would go to get a slice or watch a movie. Another community traumatized by gun violence. One of 6 mass shootings this weekend, leaving a total of 6 dead and more than a dozen injured, according to the nonprofit Gun Violence Archive. I'll be honest, it can be frustrating to report on and follow negotiations that always seem to go nowhere as more and more Americans continue to be killed. But the most meaningful change does need to come from Washington. So let's begin with one of the 2 men at the center of the Senate negotiations on gun safety, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy.
And I will have an extended clip of Chris Murphy, but I thought that for being less than 90 seconds, that was a pretty good introduction and had that personal touch of, I guess, Jake Tapper grew up on the streets of Philadelphia getting a slice of pizza and walking around where they're now having, I think it might have been a gang-related shooting is what they're saying. Of course, that's, after doing my whole show on propaganda last week, I wouldn't be silly enough to believe the first story that comes from the police about anything, although sometimes it turns out to be true. I guess we'll find out. But I thought that was a worthwhile news summary. Certainly it was half the length of the Fox News Sunday news summary and a lot more journalistic, if you ask my opinion, though there was sort of that personal part that Jake put in there. But you can let me know what you think down in the comment section, and we can compare it finally to, this is the CBS News Face the Nation news summary. They fall into this, I mean, they do mention the whole thing about gun violence, but the biggest news, they fall into the trap that all the cable news networks or all the corporate news media seem to fall into. Like, if they've got a new poll out, that's the big news. Doesn't matter what's happened or what everybody else is reporting. And that's how CBS started, that the big news is their poll that Americans are not happy with how things are going, and it has something to do with gun violence. Then they go to their chief pollster, Anthony Salvanto, and that's where I'll stop the clip that I may talk a little more about after we watch together over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. This morning, more than 3/4 3/4 of Americans say things in this country are going badly. That's higher than it has been since the early days of the COVID pandemic, according to our new CBS poll. In particular, Americans are reeling from the impact of gun violence in the wake of several deadly mass shootings. For more insight, we're joined by CBS News Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto, who joins us from New York this morning.
And if you really want to watch the discussion of the poll with Anthony Salvanto, CBS News Face the Nation uploads their entire program in like individual clips on their YouTube channel, and underneath sources, not only can you see that whole Louie Gohmert interview, you can also see the entire CBS News Face the Nation program free on their YouTube channel, split into clips, including that one that I'm not showing you. And I kind of got in my criticism as to why is the poll the big news? That doesn't seem to be right. That's polls like reflect what's happening. They aren't what's happening. And anyway, you can let me know what you think in the comments section. And oh, I saw Matthew gave me a super chat contribution. I appreciate that. I kept delaying the show today. It took a long time. It was kind of a slog today to put together something, but I think I did, and it makes me feel better that my regular viewers are here supporting me, and especially when you go so far as to support it financially with the super chat contributions or the other ways that are like down underneath the video description. I was a little disappointed. I think I may have lost some Patreon income this week, like people who were charged, but the charges didn't go through. I think it might be because this is like my 50. This is almost around the 1 year anniversary of when I started doing the Monday Media Mix-Up, and I asked people to support that, and maybe people signed up a year ago and now their credit cards aren't good anymore or whatever. But I guess, that's a normal thing that happens on Patreon, but I don't know. I don't think that's why I was like a little sluggish getting the show together today. But anyway, that's I definitely appreciate the support, moral support, financial support, anything that makes it seem like this is something continuing to be worth my time doing. Actually, last week's show, the recorded show, about 36 hours in, it got picked up by some algorithm where it was showing on people's front page more, and I got like an extra 2,000 or 3,000 views that I don't normally get on last week's video. So that was also kind of nice, and it even got monetized. Not in the first 24 hours, but by the time that happened. But anyway, I got off on a big tangent here, and I finished all the news summaries. So now I'm going to get to the Newsmaker clips. I have 3 Newsmaker clips before the bonus clips on the January 6th committee at the end. It's Senator Chris Murphy, Senator Pat Toomey, and then Representative Steve Scalise. This is Senator Chris Murphy starting off on CNN State of the Union. He's the one who probably knows most whether this is going to work, and Jake Tapper, I think, did a good job of trying to get out of him the chance of success, like what's going to be in the package, what's not going to be in the package, especially why is raising the age from 18 to 21 to buy an assault rifle not going to be in the package, apparently. And then you'll see there's some microphone problems here, and it's not my recording. This was a problem CNN had, and I spliced Jake Tapper cutting off Chris Murphy at the end when they went and fixed his microphone, and that also makes me feel better that the big, the multi-million-dollar cable news network programs have technical issues that are usually at least as frequent and bad as any technical issues I have, although I don't know, you viewers can let me know what you think as you watch. This is Chris Murphy giving us, I think, the clearest look at what might be in this package. They're negotiating. I don't think it's going to happen this week, but it might happen this month, or it might not happen at all. And the person who knows the most about that is Chris Murphy over in this clip.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says he wants a deal this week. And let's be honest, the issue here is what are Republican senators and West Virginia Democrat Joe Manchin, what are those 51 individuals, what are they willing to agree to? How close are you? What are the sticking points?
So I've never been part of negotiations as serious as these. There are more Republicans at the table talking about changing our gun laws and investing in mental health than at any time since Sandy Hook. Now, I've also been part of many failed negotiations in the past, so I'm sober-minded about our chances. We are talking about a meaningful change in our gun laws, a major investment in mental health, perhaps some money for school security that would make a difference. On the table is red flag laws, changes to our background check system to improve the existing system, a handful of other items that will make a difference. Can we get there by the end of next week, as Senator Schumer has requested? I don't know, but as late as last night, we were engaged in conversations about trying to put a package together because I think Republicans realize how scared parents and kids are across this country. I think they realize that the answer to this kind cannot be nothing. That it's frankly a test of democracy. It's a test of the federal government as to whether we can deliver at a moment of just fierce anxiety amongst the American public. So we're closer than ever before. Let's see if we land it.
So more than 250 Texas conservative gun enthusiasts and donors have a full-page ad in today's Dallas Morning News endorsing your negotiations with their home senator, Senator John Cornyn, and calling for red flag laws, which you mentioned, expanding background checks, which you mentioned, raising the age to buy a gun, a semi-automatic, I assume, to 21. It's already 21 for a handgun.
Right.
You didn't mention that. Just a few days ago, I have to say, Senator Cornyn tweeted that Second Amendment restrictions are, quote, not going to happen, he said. So what does that mean, not going to happen? Does that mean none of the things you're negotiating are going to happen?
Well, I mean, I guess I also agree that we're not going to do anything that compromises people's Second Amendment rights. We're not going to do anything that compromises the ability of a law-abiding American to be able to buy a weapon. What we're talking about is trying to make sure that dangerous or potentially dangerous individuals don't have their hands on weapons. Senator Cornyn has also talked about his interest in taking a look at how we access juvenile records for these young men who tend to be 18 to 21 committing these mass murders, to make sure that they can't get their hands on a weapon if they have had problems with the law in the past. So I think there's agreement amongst the negotiators that we're going to take some common sense steps that do not compromise Second Amendment rights. We are likely going to pair it with some significant mental health spending, which will make a difference as well. And I think everything Senator Cornyn has said is consistent with the negotiations we're having. Listen, we're not going to do everything I want. We are not going to put a piece of legislation on the table that's going to ban assault weapons, or we're not going to pass comprehensive background checks. But right now, people in this country want us to make progress. They just don't want the status quo to continue for another 30 years.
Is raising the age limit, as these Texas conservatives say they want to happen, from 18 to 21? Because disproportionately, crimes committed with semi-automatic rifles, I've seen statistics that show, are disproportionately committed by people, men, between 18 and 21. Is that on the table?
I mean, I think right now we're trying to figure out what can get 60 to 70 votes in the Senate. It is true that the reason why 18 to 21-year-olds are banned from buying pistols is that at the time, that was seen as the most dangerous weapon that you could buy. Today, I think we're realizing AR-15s are, in fact, the most dangerous weapon that an 18 to 21-year-old can buy.
Although
right now, we need to find what has 60 votes.
Yeah. I mean, most of the, when you look at the gun statistics, still, most of the gun deaths are suicides, and most of the homicides are still committed with handguns, not AR-15 style weapons, correct?
Well, and that's why the red flag law is probably the most important here. And it's not just about getting more states to pass red flag laws. It's actually about helping states implement red flag laws. So what we're talking about is, not just providing incentives for states to pass new laws, but helping fund existing red flag laws so that more individuals who are contemplating suicides can have their weapons temporarily taken from them to save their lives. So right now.
We're going to take a very quick break. We'll be right back.
So yeah, they fixed his microphone, brought him back, and then on the replay, I don't know, they like cut out that part, and just had it as one whole interview instead of going to commercial in the middle. But that is just like the weird insider media criticism part. The main political commentary part is, I mean, it sounds to me like after 30 years of there being no real progress in gun safety, gun reform, gun control, whatever you want to call it, it sounds like they're going to put together a package that's going to get well, more than 60 votes, like 70 votes maybe, because it wouldn't be good for Republicans for it to just get like all 50 Democrats and 10 Republicans, because that means there'd be 40 Republicans who would be, you know, liable to be attacked for, like, you didn't vote for bipartisan gun reform legislation. And so they're probably going to want to get it up to 70, which means they're going to water it down. There's still going to be like 30 Republicans who are like, they're coming for your guns and I'm not going to help them or whatever. Like, anything is a violation of the Second Amendment. You heard Chris Murphy in that last clip say, well, you know, none of these things are violations of the Second Amendment. These, like, really weak, I mean, there was this Ninth Amendment case about raising the age from 18 to 21, but this Ninth Circuit case, did I say Ninth Amendment? This Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals case, but I think it's still in litigation, and I don't see any reason that any of the, even, I mean, the assault weapons ban probably doesn't violate the Second Amendment according to, you know, the case, the Scalia opinion in the Supreme Court, that was all about all the Supreme Court has said at this point is that you have a right to have a gun of unspecified type in your home for self-defense. That's like the most that the Supreme Court has said so far. And I mean, they actually have another case coming up this term where they might invalidate like 100-year-old New York law that talks about whether the local governments get to decide where you can, who can carry a gun where, and like decide you have to say you have a reason, or does everybody just have a right to carry a gun everywhere in New York City? And I'm a little worried as to how the Supreme Court is going to come down on that one, and that's going to be sometime. I thought it might even be today. That's basically sometime this month, maybe the first couple days in July, and that's one of the most controversial ones, like the abortion one that's coming down that they got leaked. But anyway, you saw there from Chris Murphy that it's not universal background checks. It's kind of like watered down background checks. But some expansion from where they are now, and, you know, the red flag laws and school safety. And to emphasize the watered down background checks, the next guest is Senator Pat Toomey over on CBS's Face the Nation, where Margaret Brennan can't even get him to explain, and he's part of the negotiations, like, how come they're just not going to include the background check expansion that you've been introducing in the Senate for like a decade, or it's not quite a decade, but she'll give all the years that he introduced it. And it sounds like everything is just, they're trying to weaken everything, but get it so that they can say they did something. That's what it sounds like to me. You can let me know what you think after we watch that clip together over here.
The numbers are pretty staggering here. There have been 239 mass shootings in 2022, according to the Gun Violence Archive, which is a nonprofit that tracks these. Overnight, there was one in Philadelphia. 3 people killed, 14 injured, using a semi-automatic weapon. What has happened to the American people that has taken violence to this level?
Yeah, well, it's a complex and multifaceted problem, as you know, Margaret. In some cases, criminality in our big cities has escalated enormously. There's a lot of factors contributing to that. In some cases, it's district attorneys who think their job is to make sure no one goes to jail. That's a problem. And then, of course, we have these horrific, sensational massacres where a young man clearly has just gone completely off the rails and is deranged, and that's a very different set of circumstances. So it's a big, complicated problem.
Well, it's a big, complicated problem, and most attempts to try to create any kind of solution have stopped. But Democrats and Republicans, we just mentioned, are negotiating right now to get something. Democrats need 10 Republican votes. You're one of 6 Republicans working with Senator Chris Murphy. He said today that you all are writing this legislation right now. It will not ban assault weapons. It will not have comprehensive background checks as part of it. Is your proposal to expand background checks still in it?
Well, I certainly hope we're going to have an expansion of background checks. You know, Senator Manchin and I have been working on this for a long time, and we've tried to establish that at least for commercial sales of firearms, there ought to be a background check. So sales at gun shows, sales that are advertised over the internet. I don't know that we'll get exactly what Senator Manchin and I developed some years ago. It'd probably be something different than that, and that's fine. There are a number of mechanisms you could use to expand background checks, but I just think it makes sense. We all agree that violent criminals and deranged, dangerously mentally ill people shouldn't have firearms, so we need a mechanism to increase the likelihood that we'll identify such a person and prevent them from buying a gun legally anyway. So that's the idea behind expanding background checks.
So to be clear, because you had proposed the Manchin-Toomey background check expansion in 2013, 2015, 2019, right. You're saying what's surviving right now is essentially a watered down version of that? I mean, how is it different?
Well, this is a moving target, if you will. We're still in discussions, and we are still trying to figure out exactly what mechanism is going to enable us to get the votes that we would need. So I can't be precise about that, Margaret. It hasn't been finally resolved, but something in the space of expanding background checks, I think is very well. It certainly is on the table, and I hope will be part of a final package.
So I pretty much pre-criticized that clip as to, I mean, I think Senator Pat Toomey is telling you there in terms of the, I mean, it's more political commentary than media criticism. My criticism for Margaret Brennan is she had a Republican there and didn't really like grill him on why the U.S. has all these gun deaths. You know, you heard her sort of ask an open question at the beginning, you know, what's the cause of all these gun deaths, but didn't go so far as to show the graph that you're going to see in this next Fox News clip. Here's the graph that they show, and so kudos to Fox News for showing this. It's gun violence deaths per 100,000 population in these developed economies. Although you look at the list, and I mean, Canada's on there, Italy, I mean, Greece's economy has had a, well, anyway, that's, I actually tracked down where they came up with these numbers. That one is supposedly shows that the United States has 4.2 deaths per 100,000 and is a huge outlier. And Margaret Brennan didn't ask about that, but you saw from Pat Toomey's answer that even the expansion, not universal background checks, because a universal background check would mean if, like, I want to sell a gun to my neighbor, that my neighbor has to undergo a background check before the transaction can be complete. I heard Republican Dan Crenshaw on one of the shows a couple weeks back, like, complaining about how if he wants to lend a gun to the wife of his friend who's away for a week because she doesn't feel safe, they're both going to be committing a felony if there were universal background checks, so they can't be universal. But it's just like, will they cover more? But that if private sales aren't covered by background checks, that is a huge loophole for people to be able to buy guns. And I'm a little skeptical of, like I said before I showed that clip, that it sounds like they're going to put together something, maybe, and even that's a big maybe, that can pass the Senate with 60 or 70 votes, but it's going to be really weak sauce, or whatever metaphor for weakness you want to talk about. Now, like I said, this next clip, before I get to this next clip, I was reading some of the live comments. I see Seal Beater is like posting so many comments about the Second Amendment, and honestly, I spent years arguing about the meaning of the Second Amendment, and so I wanted to like just respond to this. For 514, Seal Beater says, Second Amendment means what it says. Well, you know, I was talking about people who financially support my channel earlier, If you give $5 or more on Patreon monthly, or just directly through PayPal, those top 2 links under the video description, I will send you not only this weatherproof vinyl #LiberalViewer sticker, but I will also send you this ACLU Constitution. And one of the things that's in here, it's the Second Amendment. But the thing about the meaning of the Second Amendment, when people talk about like Seal Beater talk about the meaning of the Second Amendment, they usually quote the last 14 words. But the Second Amendment, if you read it, 27 words. That's pretty much half the amendment that you're not quoting, which is, I don't know if I will check it out here. It's the first 13 words: a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Well-regulated. The word regulated is like the third word. So if you're talking about regulations, the third word of the Second Amendment is regulated. So explain that, Seal Beater. And the big discussion about what the meaning of the Second Amendment is, how do those 13 words modify the meaning of the subsequent 14 words? And there is a lot of evidence, although the Supreme Court in the Heller decision I was talking about earlier, that was about the right to own a handgun in your own home for self-defense. That's all the Supreme Court's found in Heller so far. But they did find it was an individual right. But before that, and that was a 5-4 decision, and the 4 people, and a lot of people before that decision believed that those first 13 words means that it was supposed to be a right of the states, the state militias, and not an individual right. There's a lot of evidence for that, and that's actually continues to be the ACLU position on the Second Amendment, that it's a collective right of the states, not an individual right to own whatever. And that's what Heller was a 5-4 decision. Probably since Trump put 3 more ultra right-wing conservatives on the court, it would be more than 5-4 now. And like I said, there is another gun rights case coming up sometime in the next couple weeks about this 100-year-old New York law that lets New York decide whether you have to give a good reason before they let you carry a gun anywhere in New York. So anyway, I committed some legal analysis there, but before Heller, back like in the late 90s, I believe it or not, on America Online. This is so long ago that America Online, I was a volunteer for the ACLU, free speech zone chat area, and then there was a message board. And that was one of the top complaints people would come to the ACLU. This was so long ago, I was saying that it was on America Online, and as a volunteer, what I would get as compensation was free time, free hours on America Online. This is where you got 5 or 10 per month, and after that you had to pay. Or this was I feel like I'm talking about the olden days or whatever. But anyway, so I spent many years arguing about the meaning of the Second Amendment, and there's a lot of case law all over the place. And if you want to, you can't just say it means what it says. Well, what about the first 13 words? But anyway, I went off on a big digression there because I have all that useless knowledge about the Second Amendment in the back of my head somewhere. Now I'm going to show you something I just learned today when I was, like I said, I'm giving kudos to Fox News for showing this chart of the United States being a huge outlier in our gun violence deaths per 100,000 people. But then John Roberts lets Representative Steve Scalise, from Republican from the House, whose expertise on this subject is that he was the victim of that. Remember that shooting, the Republicans who were practicing for a baseball game, a congressional baseball game, and some crazy Bernie Sanders supporter came and shot up the Republicans. Well, he was in the hospital for a long time. For a while, it looked like he might not make it. So he does have some expertise on mass shootings, I guess, based on that. But his answer here is totally bogus, and John Roberts has no follow-up, lets him get away with it, and I will explain why after we watch that final clip on the main topic before I get to the 2 bonus January 6th committee clips. But here's the Fox News Sunday biased interview of Steve Scalise that I'll talk about a little more after we watch together over here.
You know, Congressman, it's a great thought to think that we could prevent all of these things. But, you know, as people said after 9/11, when we're trying to prevent a terrorist attack, we've got to be right every time, and they only need to be right once. And we still see people getting through the system, people falling through the cracks. Let me move ahead to what's going on in this country. Because in terms of the developed world, the United States far and away leads every other nation in the developed world in terms of gun violence. Take a look at this graph. The U.S. way out in front with 4 deaths per 100,000 people. The next closest nation is Cyprus, way behind at just below 0.7 deaths per 100 people. What do you think is responsible for that discrepancy?
Well, in a lot of those countries, first of all, I mean, you look at America. In the last couple of years, you've seen this crazy defund the police movement, but you've also seen a movement that's been going on for a few years in big cities where the DAs aren't even prosecuting criminals until it is a shooting or a violent crime, and they're letting criminals back out on the streets. And inevitably, what you see is higher rates of crime. And what you're also seeing is more and more American citizens, law-abiding citizens, are buying guns to defend themselves. It's happening in every demographic group you can imagine, where you have large increases in people buying guns, because if they can't have faith that their local police department that's been defunded can arrive quickly, or if the DA is going to let the criminal out, they're their only line of defense. So people are buying guns more to defend themselves against crime. But crime is out of control in a lot of big cities. But by the way, if you look at what happened in those cities, you see a lot of the things with the defund the police movement, with letting people out, no cash bail, where they're making it easier for people to commit crimes. Look at the smash and grab crimes. Do you think it's going to end there? If they think they can get away with a crime, they're not going to be charged. They will go on and commit more crimes and worse crimes. It's happened in other places. Let's get back to regular policing.
All right, let's take a look at where the public is on some of these policies regarding gun sales. Do you support or oppose requiring background checks for all gun buyers?
So you can see he goes on to a whole different question. Now, remember, he asked him about this chart here that shows the United States way out of proportion, huge outlier. Why is this? Makes the United States different? And it's based on this Institute for Health Metrics Evaluation data, and I went to that website and I read the article, and then I figured out, because you notice there's no date on here, and I thought it was what's the date, because I want to know why Steve Scalise is blaming this on defund the reason we're an outlier is because of defund the police and because of progressive prosecutors and no cash bail and criminal justice reform. That's the reason. That's the reason that the United States is an outlier like this. That seems to be incredibly bogus argument, especially if you look at, that was 4.2 per 100,000. But I went to the Institute for Health Metric Evaluation website here, and you can see that this is from 1990 to 2019. It's 4.2 at the end here. It gets a little above 6 back in the 90s, then drops. And I mean, we've been way out of proportion for that entire 30 years, 3 decades worth of. I mean, you can see 4.2 is actually pretty close to the bottom. So blaming it on. And by the way, I put a link down to the webpage where you can do that whole thing yourself if you want to figure out the numbers yourself. But that was to blame that 4.2 per 100,000 firearms deaths in the United States on defund the police and progressive prosecutors when it's been going on for decades. That is just ridiculous. And you saw John Roberts, Fox News, even though Fox News, I mean, you have to give them kudos because they actually showed their viewers this chart. I mean, that's not a chart you're going to, and you didn't even see that chart. Like I said, Margaret Brennan didn't show that chart to Pat Toomey, so you gotta give him credit for that. But the rest of the interview, I mean, they say that Chuck Todd can't do a follow-up. I mean, that's got to be like the non-follow-up of the year right there, right? I mean, you can let me know what you think in the comment section. And now I'm going to get to these two bonus clips. The January 6th committee is holding primetime hearings where there's supposedly going to be some bombshells, like never heard before facts, and they're going to show like clips of all these interviews they've been doing on video. We might see like the Trump kids, or who knows who is going to be on video, but they're going to start off with these lawyers who were these people who were close to Mike Pence, talking about how Mike Pence was in danger, and there was this like conspiracy to get Mike Pence out of the, not to certify the votes and to like steal the election that Biden had legitimately won. And anyway, these next two clips I'm going to show you are both news summaries. The first one is from ABC. It's George Stephanopoulos briefly. And they show Peter Navarro complaining about what Louie Gohmert was saying in my first clip about how he got arrested this week. But then they go quickly over to their justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, who's actually, instead of talking about what's coming up in the January 6th committee hearings, he talks about what's going on in the criminal prosecutions, but it's kind of parallel to what's going on in the committee hearings. And then I'll show you the one from CBS, which is specifically about what to expect in the hearings this Thursday. And then after that, and before my bonus Dash clip for the fans of Dash the Cat out there, I'll briefly discuss whether on Friday I should do a special live stream based on the primetime hearings Thursday night. But anyway, here is the more extended, and this is maybe the best report of all the four programs. I mean, CNN had an interview with, what's his name? I always get him confused with Rob Riggle, the guy who was a correspondent on The Daily Show, but Wigglesworth, one of the former Republican who's like an investigator for the January 6th committee. They did a good interview with Jake Tapper on CNN State of the Union on that. That full program's down there, but I don't have any of those clips. But I thought regarding the criminal prosecution and kind of what's going on with that, this was a really great story, and it got even better in the last 24 hours because they talk about what happened with the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. But there's been additional indictments just today, like this afternoon, announced against, I think, several Proud Boys for seditious conspiracy. So this is getting thicker and thicker. And possibly they're cooperating and naming the higher-ups. You'll see mentioned in here Michael Flynn and Roger Stone, who have both been pardoned in the past by Trump. And anyway, I'll talk about all of that a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
What the Justice Department is doing is wrong on all manner of counts. These are ultra-virus, unenforceable, unlawful subpoenas. And that committee should never have been formed. I'm trying to do my duty to this country. I'm in an untenable position. The Constitution is on my side on this.
Trump advisor Peter Navarro lashing out after his arrest Friday. The Department of Justice charged him with contempt of Congress for refusing to cooperate with the January 6th committee. As public hearings get underway this week, Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas has a closer look at the criminal investigation.
As Congress presents televised hearings and the story of the January 6th attack on the Capitol unfolds, the Justice Department has been increasingly drawn into the political fallout of the House investigation.
I have represented myself pro se.
On Friday, in a dramatic escalation, the Justice Department reached into the Trump White House, indicting former aide Peter Navarro for contempt of Congress for refusing to cooperate with the House Select Committee. The same charges filed against Trump ally Steve Bannon back in January. Bannon has pleaded not guilty. But DOJ notified House investigators it would not charge former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and his deputy, who both offered some level of cooperation with the committees. Leaders of the committee called the decision puzzling, but the Justice Department appeared to be establishing its independence. DOJ's focus, what prosecutors believe to be clear-cut crimes, with a heavy emphasis on who planned and conducted the worst attack on the Capitol in modern history. The Justice Department's criminal investigation quietly has continued to gather momentum, with the FBI uncovering disturbing allegations. Agents have recently identified 2 alleged major conspiracies, specific plots to use force to block Joe Biden from becoming president. And authorities say both conspiracies were hatched well in advance of January 6th. 2 anti-government groups with far-right leanings, the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, are being portrayed as the primary soldiers in these conspiracies. An ABC News extensive review of charges and recent guilty pleas paint a stark and dark picture.
We're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you.
It was just after 10 a.m. as the Save America rally for President Trump began to build steam that the FBI says 100 members of the Proud Boys gathered at the Washington Monument and decided to make their way to the grounds of the U.S. Capitol. They were soon surrounded by an ever-increasing and boisterous crowd, furious at the prospect that Congress was about to certify Joe Biden as president. By 12:53, the Proud Boys' number had swollen to roughly 300. Then a critical moment. Suddenly, the FBI says an apparent member of the Proud Boys becomes the first person to breach Capitol barriers. All hell breaks loose.
It looked like a medieval battle scene. It was some of the most brutal combat I've ever encountered.
By 2:14 p.m., prosecutors say this alleged Proud Boy, Dominic Pizzola, who has pleaded not guilty, used a riot shield he stole from a Capitol police officer to break a window of the Capitol, clearing the way for the mob.
It's shocking. We've never seen anything like this. And what is the most shocking part of it is, if you think about how are they going to stop the certification, there's only one way that you could stop it, and that is to violently interfere with the counting of the votes.
New allegations claim that the Proud Boys had formed a so-called Ministry of Self-Defense, and that on January 4th, 2 days before the attempted insurrection, the group actively discussed a plan to attack the Capitol. The FBI says the group had even developed a written plan that laid out an effort to occupy federal buildings here in Washington. The Oath Keepers, meanwhile, had been amassing an arsenal and had deployed members just outside the city, even stashing arms at local hotels, according to the FBI, which claims they were prepared to use lethal force if necessary. One senior member of the Proud Boys has pleaded guilty to a conspiracy to disrupt the certification of Joe Biden's electors. And 3 senior leaders of the Oath Keepers have pleaded guilty to a seditious conspiracy to prevent Biden from taking power. All are cooperating with the Justice Department's investigation.
And what they did was, one word, they conspired. They conspired together, and what we don't know is who else did they conspire with. And that's what GOJ needs to continue to seek to find out.
A number of critical questions remain. Among them, who provided the money for the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, and others to travel, stay in hotels, and to buy weapons? And who else, if anyone, knew of specific plans by these two groups to block Biden's certification by force? Prosecutors also say the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers were involved with or discussed providing security to a number of VIPs associated with former President Trump that day. Roger Stone and Michael Flynn among them. The Justice Department appears to be trying to see if there was a convergence involving money or coordination between those who organized the political rally and those who organized violence. The investigation expanding, clearly far from over.
Thanks, Pierre Thomas, for that. The roundtable's back. Primetime hearings this Thursday.
And yeah, that was actually in some ways a good preview of what the January 6th committee hearings might be talking about. And like I said before I showed the clip, they talked about how a bunch of Oath Keepers have pled guilty, including to seditious conspiracy. But the breaking news is that today a bunch of Proud Boys, in addition to the Oath Keepers, Proud Boys have been charged with seditious conspiracy. And you see Oath Keepers pleading guilty and cooperating. That could happen with the Proud Boys, could involve people around Trump. I've also talked, the one thing missing there is the conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. And I talked about that federal felony on previous programs, how it's the certification of electors has already been found by judges to be an official proceeding under this one particular statute, and it's a felony that carries a sentence of up to 20 years. So it's a pretty major felony. That's the kind of thing I could, I could bring my legal background, my 5 years as a criminal defense attorney. I could use that to talk about the crimes involved, possibly if I do a live stream next Friday covering the Thursday primetime hearing. And even though that wasn't officially a preview, like I said, I thought it was kind of a pretty good preview, and then you can juxtapose it to what they showed on CBS News' Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan and Scott MacFarlane. I actually follow Scott MacFarlane on Twitter, and he tweets out what's going in court with the January 6th defendants a lot. But here he is previewing the January 6th committee hearings that I will talk about with you a little more, and think about, I don't know, would anyone be available like sometime early afternoon on Friday, maybe early afternoon Pacific time, I guess, or sometime in the afternoon Pacific time to watch a live stream? I mean, part of what will determine it is, are there any good clips from the hearings Thursday night? But anyway, let's watch this preview and talk about it a little more afterwards. And here's the clip now.
We're joined now by congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane. Scott, it's good to have you here at the table. These will be prime time programming hearings on Thursday. What do we expect to hear?
The committee has promised what they call previously unseen material, and we have seen a lot of Capitol riot video. So it raises the prospect they're going to show us some of their material. According to our reporting, recordings were made or recordings were requested of some of the top-level witnesses who met with this January 6th committee. We may hear or see some of that, and it's worth reminding people of the range of interviews: Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, Rudy Giuliani, and some of the rank-and-file rioters. Watch out for this. We know some of the defendants in the criminal case have gone before this committee, mentioned they've gone before the committee to seek leniency. They have voices that could be heard during these hearings, either on tape or live in person.
So some of this will be produced on tape. We've heard from members like Congressman Jamie Raskin promises to blow the roof off the House. Are expectations being set too high here?
It's unclear who's going to be in the House looking at the roof. The committee has a series of hearings, likely all of them this month in June, as America is busy with summer. Also, who are the persuadables? Who has an open mind and is willing to listen and perhaps change their mind based on whatever is being shown by this committee? Or are people's ideas too baked in? And one other thing, Margaret, the Republicans who have defied this committee, the 5 Republicans subpoenaed who've not come in to speak, and the Republicans who've criticized the committee outside, have not paid a political price for doing so. In fact, Margaret, they may be better positioned for their primaries or general elections because of it. That has weakened a bit of the foundation.
Scott, I know you'll be busy this week and in the weeks ahead. Thank you for coming in this Sunday.
Oh, and speaking of those Republicans, apparently the Republicans are going to have like a rapid response team together to respond to whatever the Democrats, and of course there are 2 Republicans on the committee, Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, but to respond to whatever they say. I mean, are expectations too high? Are they going to blow the roof off the House? Or, like they said, Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, Rudy Giuliani video could be played, or who knows? Anyway, you can let me know in the comments section, the live viewers. I'm following along with that, or for the recorded show viewers. I see some people are willing to show up, so it will, like I said, depend also on how good the video is. The one thing also, people were talking about like people's attention span. This is something different from gun rights. It's, I talked about how the war in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin's kind of depending on the short attention span of Americans in the West to like stop focusing on what's going on with the Russian invasion of Ukraine and still feel the pain of, you know, gas prices and maybe food prices, and that might stop our resolve. And then, of course, there are all these Supreme Court opinions. There's the Second Amendment one. There's the abortion one. What happens if, like, the Supreme Court puts out an abortion decision on Thursday? Is that going to, like, wreck the ability of the January 6th Commission to really get focus on what they're trying to show the American people happened? I don't know. So all these things factor into whether I will do a live stream on Friday. But you can also let me know, if you're a recorded show viewer, what you think. And anyway, that is the last of the clips I picked out for you. I did promise you a bonus Dash clip. I don't know, could you hear Dash mewing off in the distance while I was talking in the last few minutes? I'm a little worried about Dash. He seems to be losing weight, losing energy a little bit. You know, last November, before Sandy died, we thought Dash was going to die. He didn't eat for like 2 weeks, and we took him to the vet, and he got some antibiotics and some steroids, and he got better and it was like after not eating for 2 weeks, made like this miraculous recovery. But now he seems to be like less energetic, and he's not eating as much, and he does a lot of this yowling, and I don't know, maybe he needs more steroids. Like, I don't know, maybe he is turning 17 in a few days. I believe June 9th is his 17th birthday, so that's like 3 days from now, recording this. That's pretty old for a cat, but he was doing pretty well. But to try to, like, this is all my long intro to the bonus Dash clip, where we're trying to, like, get him to gain a little weight. We gave him some tuna, and I got a clip of him this morning eating some of that tuna over here. So there you go. I'll see what happens for this Friday live stream. I'm still kind of thinking about making that Star Trek Gone Woke video, maybe, that I've talked about the last few weeks. I have some of the clips already imported for it. And whether I have a chance to do that or not, I will be back next Monday and every Monday at least through the November midterms. Here in California, we've got like a big primary tomorrow. I've been working on some local issues, but I'm not going to go into all that. I'm like already way over time, and I've got a couple things I got to do before 6 o'clock, and that's 10 minutes from now. So thank you all for joining me, and till I have some other reason to upload a video, till Friday I do a live stream or not, or next Monday, whatever, I guess I'll be seeing all of you around the internet.